all the participants to mute yourself. Good afternoon to one and all. I would like to introduce myself, Manjunath Babu NS, Faculty of Mechanical Engineering, coordinating today's program. Welcome you all for today's webinar session hosted by Department of Mechanical Engineering, Dr.TTIT Institute of Technology, Kolar Goldfields. Let me introduce you a resource person for today's session, Mr. Vinay G. Rajagopal, who is ISV IoT Embedded Technology Lead in Red Hat India, South Asia. So we welcome you, Mr. Vinay.
Thank you, Doctor. Thank you.
So now I request Professor Thonraj Arash sir to introduce a resource person and to introduce a resource person to the session gathering. Over to you, sir.
Okay, thank you, sir. Good afternoon to all. I'm introducing Mr. Venu Rajagopal. Is having a 17 plus years of experience in enabling partner ecosystems to adopt new age technologies, practices and solutions to embrace the digital transformations initiatives, modernize and optimize the platform delivery, monitoring and management through hybrid, edge and multi-cloud model across BFSI, telecom, retail, CSP, GSI, and embedded and ISV. Can strategic architecture and roadmap, boot camps and demand generation and strategic alliances and GTM. Prior to joining this Red Hat, he worked as under several pre-sales and solution-related leadership roles with both services and product organizations like Tech Mahindra, IBM, JP Morgan Chase, HP Digital, and etc. He holds 3 granted patents and 2 published files. He is a member of AI Group at World Economic Forum, Center for 4th Industrial Revolution India. He is a member of IET Future Tech Panel. He also holds a Blackboard certified product management professional management from London School of Economics and Political Science, and design thinking from Manchester's Institute of Technology, executive education, strategic and leadership from Jack Welach Management Institution, and he is one of our alumni, and he holds a bachelor degree in electronics and communication from GVIT, named nowadays as Dr.TTIT Institute of Technology, KGF. I'm welcoming you, sir. Hello?
Thank you. Thank you, Professor.
Okay. Carry on, sir.
So if you're good, we can get started.
Okay, thank you, Thonraj sir. Sir,
Thank you, sir.
and I would like to request our HOD to address the gathering.
Okay, good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon, Vinay. We're very happy to know that you are an alumni of this institution. So very happy to go through your the profile, which is very robust. And after doing your BE, I think it is electronics and communication. I think
Right.
you have done your you have done.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I am here.
Yeah, madam, madam. I think you will be the better person to talk to interact with the Vinay. He is your student.
Yeah, Vinay, how are you?
Very, very good, madam. Absolutely delighted to be with you.
I'm so proud of you having so many qualifications and coming back to our institution to deliver. Thank you. All the best.
Thanks a lot. And of course, there's a lot more for us to do, and we will definitely continue to see how we could add value to the, the student community.
Yeah, definitely. So on behalf of management, all teaching staff, students, and everybody, and even from outside participants, I welcome you for this particular session. And I also request all the students also to be interactive, asking questions and answering the questions what has been asked. So please be interactive. And I also request Vinay to come over to our college once again. It is of course your college once again, and interact with the staff and students also, so that we will be benefited from whatever the knowledge bank what you have. Thank you very much once again. Thank you.
Absolutely, sir. Thank you for this opportunity, and thank you, Professor Tonsuraju, for the kind introduction. Thanks for the dean, and absolute privilege to have RD Madam as a part of this, audience. It's privilege, and I look forward to absolutely being present physically in the campus. I think nothing to beat the physical face-to-face interaction. There's a lot for us to do, and hopefully we get there, as soon as the pandemic kind of slows down, at the best possible next occasion for sure. And just to go back to the focused the session for today, which is more on innovation and emerging technologies. The way I put this presentation together is that I'm going to delve into a lot of emerging technologies. What is the foundation? How technology is shaping up? Why is it leading to very new, innovative services that are potentially possible? And how emerging technology kind of is under the fabric to build and bring all of these innovations to the humankind. So that's most of the chunk of the presentation today. And of course, the last few slides, I will deal with how innovation at campus. And I'm sure you would have lots of questions in the last slides. I'm happy to answer them, and we're also happy to take a lot of actions out of this presentation. So that's more or less is how I put this together. Quick introduction. I know Professor Tonsuraju has done an excellent job in quickly briefing, my current profile and what I've done. So I'm with Red Hat right now responsible for the partner ecosystem in terms of solutions and architecture, more from a go-to-market perspective, and I'm responsible for the digital transformation across, right from application to platform, irrespective whether it's a single public cloud or a multi-cloud, or even the edge emphasis. Edge is more like having the compute very closer to the place where the data is getting originated. Of course, I will deal much more in detail as I move forward. I'm also a member of the Artificial Intelligence Core Group from the World Economic Forum. Under the World Economic Forum, we have something called the Center for Fourth Industrial Revolution in India. That's where I'm a part of it. I also deal with the smart cities mission that the Urban and Affair Housing Department has. Other than that, I'm also part of the IETs, the Institution of Engineering and Technology's Future Tech Panel. Quickly, I have a business management from London School of Economics and Political Science. I also did a certification course from Design Thinking from MIT, Sloan School of Management. Currently, I'm pursuing my Master of Technology in MTech from Breva University with AI as the specialization. Of course, my base is from the college that is organizing this whole webinar, which is then called GVIT, part of the Vishweshwaraya Technological University. And I have another certification on leadership and strategic management from Jack Welch Management Institute. Like Professor Tonsuraju said, I have 3 granted patents, and a couple of them which are published. Of course, all of this data is available on my LinkedIn profile. So if you go click there, you'll be able to see more details about the patents and so on and so forth. And as always, I look forward to interacting with you guys. So feel free to connect on any professional platforms like LinkedIn. I always look forward to engaging and interacting with the students and faculty communities. Now, having said that, I would like to quickly, emphasize on where is the technology heading, what we believe is a significant driving force that is going to change the next 5, 10, 15 years, from a technology perspective, which I believe is absolutely important from a student's perspective, from a faculty's perspective, so that you are we're building and training those engineers who are capable of understanding the offset of technology, the inflex point that we are in as an industry, and see how you could then add value to some of those emerging technologies and all those use cases, all those business benefits, all those value propositions that are absolutely important for driving the citizen-focused entire value system that we want to bring into the end perspective. So from a 5G perspective, so in a quick nutshell, if you look at the entire emphasis of how the technology is changing, right? That's where the key area is 5G, because 5G, as you all are aware of, the next generation communication protocols that are truly, giving that ability to connect and instrument anything. So in my perspective, if anything is smart, that particular entity has to be instrumented, and if it's instrumented, it's interconnected, right? There's ability to connect with any adjacencies for that matter. And then once it's instrumented and interconnected, it has this data that you can then tap into and derive intelligence out of it, and kind of put yourself into a continuous service improvement. How do I improve my service? How do I improve my operational efficiency? How do I bring new innovative services to the end customers, right? So that's all possible because of 5G. In more from a technical emphasis, and this is where it's absolutely important for students like you and faculties to draw those lines and connect those dots from a technical underlining imperatives, right? When I say 5G, this is a massive improvement in the communication channel, right? So we're talking about speeds closer to 10 Gbps. 10 Gbps is almost like 10 times of what is currently available, for us, right? If you look at the broadband facilities, we touch about 100 Mbps right now. So we're talking about 10 Gbps. That's the speed. That speed is just amazing, right? And from a technical perspective, we call that as EMBP, which is enhanced mobile broadband. So we're giving you almost a broadband kind of an experience in a wireless kind of a setup, right? It's absolutely, there's no cabled wires. And we're talking about speed, which is capable of giving you a throughput in a huge chunk of bandwidth that you could then pass through any medium. And I'll touch upon what are those use cases that derives the enhanced mobile broadband, right? We're talking about AR, VR. AR is augmented reality, and VR is virtual reality. And of course, now we're also talking about what we call mixed reality, MR, right? So anything that is artificial, which is where you're augmenting that onto an existing real interface. Like, for example, if I wear a glass, I could see an object, and then there's data point that comes on top of an object. That's where the augmented reality is. It's reality with data superimposed on top of that image. Virtual reality is more, from a gaming perspective, where whenever you wear your headgear from the virtual reality perspective, you completely get into a virtual mode. There's nothing around you which is real. It's more like gaming, amusement parks, looking at, if someone's built a house, how would it look even before, someone builds a house? How could I go through the 3D design module and still see how my bedroom is going to look, how my study room is going to look, and so on and so forth. Those are simple examples from a virtual reality perspective. Now, the importance of enhanced mobile broadband there is the fact that your ability to move your head or any visual ailments within the smart gear perspective, the image has to be rendered accordingly, right? There shouldn't be any flickering and so on and so forth. That's all potentially possible through enhanced mobile broadband. Now, of course, everything is getting replaced, right? We didn't realize the handheld, you could call it smartphone, iPad, iPhone, wherever, right? So we see that everything is going to happen out of your mobile phones, right? It could be payments, it could be signing, even your legal documents and so on and so forth. So there's typical all the human touch interfaces, right? The omni-channel experiences are going to be driven through through handhelds, through smartphones, tabs, and so on and so forth. Now, what that also brings the aspect of, if you look at a wireless broadband, when I say in-avenue, it talks about if you walk into a factory floor, a manufacturing unit, you have a shop floor, you have a paint body floor, you have the raw material, the assembly lines. So, anyone, any worker, any supervisor, or any engineer for that matter, could seamlessly walk through the entire in-venue and not have any drop off the packets or any jitter in the network performance and so on and so forth. It's absolute seamless access to the broadband. So that's what enhanced mobile broadband brings to the table, right? Now, if I go back and look at the low latency, the ultra reliable low latency communications, we're talking about under 1 milliseconds. Now, the examples that I would like to cite to you guys, so that you know where the technology is heading, is things like drones, right? You use drones to kind of have this flight operations. You tie a camera to the drone so that you can then do what we call visual analytics, right? So, for example, if there's an architect, if there's a very old architect, like for example, a building of prime importance, it could be like the oil rigging well in the deep seas, right? Which are absolutely important. They're absolutely important to ensure the strength of the material, right? So that is where you potentially use drones to, look for cracks, look for any debris that probably would have generated because of crack, the gradual wear and tear, and so on and so forth. And that is absolutely important from a latency perspective, because you will be handling the flight operations, fly, zoom, return, all those typical operations from a ground station. And if you don't do that, you would probably lose the line of sight, and there's potential accident that's possible from a drone's perspective. The same thing holds good from robotic applications. It could be your arm, your artificial arms. It could be robots operating on the assembly line of a car manufacturing unit. All of this has to ensure that there is a strong latency. For example, you probably would have heard about the incident that happened with Tesla, right? So if you're driving a Tesla, you're driving any latest car, and it's on a driverless mode. And if you see there's an object right in front of you, if you take all that data and process that data and then give that action that says, okay, apply your brakes, if that is even less than a millisecond, or even 5-6 seconds, there's potential accident that could happen, right? You could pretty much go hit that object in front of you. That object could be anything, moving, non-moving, whatever it is, right? So it's absolutely important that you have that closed loop, and that closed loop feedback that drives the next best action is absolutely important from a latency perspective. So and of course the energy and utilities, that's the biggest chunk that we see from an industry adoption perspective, where your distribution of energy and augmenting the traditional coal and steam based energy with latest green resource energies like the solar energy and all of that. There's an augmentation of bringing both of those at one of your subdivisional various institutional stations that we have. We usually call it a substation, but it depends on each country how they kind of put together their operations. So the need to kind of load share, the need to augment the traditional energy sources with the latest green resources is absolutely important. So all of this ties into the ultra reliable low latency communications. Another important aspect that we see from 5G is the what we call MMTC, which is massive machine type communications. Now we're talking about approximately 1 million connections for every kilometer square. Now you've seen this, right? You already have witnessed this. For example, the whole need of having IP version 6, for that matter, was to ensure that there are more IP addresses that then can be assigned any entity for that matter. So the moment you have instrument, like I said at the beginning, if you have instrumented a device, it has to be interconnected, and that interconnected in a TCP IP world is all through IP addresses, right? So it becomes absolutely important to have more IP addresses and therefore more machines connected. And some of the use cases that we see from an industry perspective is smart city. Smart city seems to be the driving force for pretty much everything, right? In terms of smart cars, which are connected, in terms of smart poles, we call V2X, vehicle to any transmission. And where we see a tremendous emphasis is around the smart meter, you know, to realize the consumption model of the electricity, and also to realize if there is a data leak in terms of theft and so on and so forth from an electricity perspective. Also tremendous improvement from asset tracking and predictive maintenance. Every equipment in a manufacturing unit or in any process industry or discrete industry is that they don't want any downtime, right? The downtime leads to non-productive time, which leads to tremendous impact on the procuring raw materials and the prices that they will have to then sell the end product. So asset tracking, asset predictive maintenance is absolutely important. We've seen asset being monitored. We see regular scheduled maintenance where you send an engineer to go fix things up, look at the debris, look at the gaskets that are connecting the two rotatory equipments and so on and so forth. So it's all the MRO, the maintenance, rehaulving, overhauling, repair process is currently driven as a standard operating procedures based on periodical human-driven inspectional and investigation purposes, right? There is no on demand as such. It's like, okay, I go every once in a month and do my maintenance activities and walk out. And of course, I spoke about utility, I spoke about energy distribution and transformation. That's another key area where we see tremendous impact to the global change in terms of the global warming, the entire impact that it has in terms of the natural resources and being more environmental friendly from tapping into the green resources like solar and wind farm. So that's what is the 5G, which is a foundation that's fueling all of these emerging technologies. And whatever you see that is truly happening around you, be it electric vehicles, be it the AR, VR, or be it those cool drones that you try to fly and take your selfies and all of that is typically possible because of enhanced communication protocols. That is the foundation of everything that's happening. Now, I quickly, now that we've understood how 5G is impacting, what are these emerging technologies that are truly happening, I want to quickly touch upon how is it being broken up into different industrial clusters, right? So there's a lot of video services that I spoke about, automation that I spoke about, a simple example of Tesla, the car, where you automate the entire next best action in terms of applying brakes and so on and so forth. Monitoring and tracking, probably one of the least because it's already existing. Connected vehicle, that's what we see right now. Every car that is getting rolled out of the plant is already connected. The infotainment, the services part, and all of that is potentially possible. Now you see the future is where the next time you probably drive into a gas station, it will tell you what the fuel levels has to be, and in your car will be also making the payment, what we call wallet on wheels. So everything that you have from a payment perspective from your smartphones is now getting embedded on cars. So the next time, like I said, you drive your car is intelligent to even make the payments for your gas stations. So that's more or less is where the industry is heading. I want to quickly spend the next 10 minutes in terms of giving you use cases of where exactly is this being influenced. Now, I did talk about smart city. Now, smart city is absolutely important to ensure that there is the citizen-centric focus. There is well-being. There's the cost of living, the cost of working, the cost of having to socialize with others. Absolutely becomes important, and those are the key GDP aspects. From a smart city perspective. See, smart city is not just about making the environment great. It's also about attracting more people to come and contributing to the economic growth of that city. Right? That's the key area. And some of the use cases that we predominantly see is like the air quality, the water quality, ability to measure, ability to understand the consumption pattern, ability to be ready if there is any failure in terms of the capacity, right? And that kind of ties back to the ability to park your vehicles, the ability to manure the traffic. There's congestion in all of that. So the smart parking, all of that ties into the smart city aspect. So there's of course, I don't know if most of you know, the government has already initiated the smart number plates, right? So tomorrow, very soon, when you're traveling through your car, you've seen FASTag, right? When you're traveling through your car, you don't have to really pull out cash and pay for the tolls. Things like FASTag, which is RFID-based architecture that we have right now, is all getting much more enhanced to bring in what we call a smart number plate, which will then be capable of recognizing where you have traveled, reducing the crime in the city, ensuring there's no theft of the vehicles, and so on and so forth. So it kind of ties into a real-time surveillance, automatic number plate identification. The NPRs that you see typically are the inferencing use cases from companies like NVIDIA, Google, and so on and so forth. So this is pretty much what we see as a smart city use cases. And I want you guys, as I explain this to you guys, I want you guys to think of what are those innovations that you could talk about. And I'll tell you, the last time I did this to one of the colleges, one of the students like you had this great idea of building a waste management, and as simple as collecting the waste out of the university, the campus, and then trying to build compost out of it, trying to take the waste from the canteen and converting into manures and compost so that they can then feed the fauna, the plants and all of that you have within within your campuses. So just to give you an example. Other things that we see are smart assets. Like I said, every equipment within the plant floor, every equipment in any factory, in as much as your campuses, right? You have ACs running in each of the classes or the labs. You'll have to make sure that these assets, these equipments are top notch. There's no downtime as such. So how do I monitor them? How do I make sure the maintenance is not periodic, but it is predictive, right? How do I predict the failure of an equipment and therefore be better prepared to ensure that there are engineers who would then go to fix that based on anomalies? Don't wait till it breaks, but the moment you catch a symptom, proactively go do an on-demand maintenance rather than just doing a scheduled maintenance. So that's termed as condition-based monitoring. So there's various conditions that we monitor of an equipment. It could be as simple as the vibration. If the vibration is very high in an equipment, that leads to the fact that there is potentially some misalignment, which would then lead to all the wear and tears and the failure of the equipment. So as simple as that is potentially monitored to ensure the availability and the working condition of the asset is top notch. And of course, when you monitor that, you will then be able to enable your field services to be more on demand rather than just go there and do some work and come off. And a couple more industries that I will touch upon is the smart ports. We see tremendous growth in terms of vessel monitoring. Of course, ever since the 2611 attack that we've had, the government has been very good in terms of enforcing even the Gs, being monitored. Now, vessel monitoring is right on the top of the list. Assets, predictive maintenance, what we call UGV, right? The unmanned ground vehicles, all of that being monitored. Now, the way the berth management happens in a typical port is the moment a shipping vessel, it could be a large vessel, it could be a typical CNG carrier, right? This what we call the liquefied natural gas. So these are very, very large vessels, and when they come to the shore, you have to ensure that the berth is managed for them. There is a berth that is allotted to them so that there is no demurrage, right? No waste of having that ship to stay in the waters because it didn't get a berth to come and land upon, right? So that the loading and unloading activities can then happen. So all of this are tremendous use cases that we see, which is again being fueled by 5G and connectivity. Another important one, we see tremendous growth in electric vehicles. You probably have seen electric bikes, electric cars already, being operational in the cities right now. So we see tremendous growth in terms of retail. And when I say retail, it's the ability to discover that there is a shop, there is a certain service that is available. It could be as small as a restaurant, which could be food, and as much as placing those SKUs. When I say placing those SKUs, there's tremendous. You probably would have noticed that when you walk into a mall or a large retail format shops, that they always place the meat or the rice at the way end of the aisle, right? Because they know that these are essential commodities and you will get to them. And in the process of you getting to that, you might discover 5 or 6 very impulsive, like candies and chocolates and, promotional items, buy one, take one, en route to that essential commodities. And that kind of excites people to say, oh, why don't I pick it up? So it's the data that people capture and say, here's the buying behavior. And I know, people end up buying if I keep those promotions, the placements and the offers and promotions tied, very personalized, but placed in the right appropriate position, so that when I walk in to get a rice or a meat, I end up buying all of that, which probably is not necessary, but it's being driven out of the impulsive buying behavior that the end customer might have. Now, at the same time, we've also seen tremendous personalization. Let's say if I'm driving an electric vehicle and I know that the fuel, the battery is low, and if I'm driving a non-electric vehicle, the fuel is low, then I could then push proactive notifications through the infotainment channels that I could, that could then tell me based on the GNS, the navigation systems, that here's where the next fuel station is, here's where the next charging station is, and it also throws up advertisements like, hey, you can get a 10% discount coupon if you're not a non. Let's give you an example of India specific example. Like for example, if you're a HP petrol customer or diesel customer, and let's say there's an Indian oil customer, so they can throw you a 10% discount to acquire an extra customer into that. So all this personalization, all of this potential data driven, the intelligent decisions that we call, is all potentially possible through some of the use cases that we see from smart retail and smart transportation. The last one that I want to address from an industry perspective is smart workers. Now, all these workers are, getting the necessary equipments, wearables, what we call PPEs, right? The personal protective equipments to ensure that the environment is safe. They don't have the occupational hazards, impacting their respiratory systems or whatever health hazards that they might have, right? So that's typically what we see now, and they're all getting real-time monitored. Now, you remember I gave you an example of AR, VR, right? So let's say I work for a shop floor, like a manufacturing unit. If something is down, all I have to do is, go take the permits, which is all real-time now, take the permit, walk into that particular shop floor, wear my AR, VR headgear, and I get the entire operational aspects. When you say operational aspects, I talk about inspection, I talk about disassembling the equipment, doing all the inspection, the repair, and assembling it back again, and then validating the functionality, right? All of these SOPs, standard operating procedures, are now possible by augmenting real-time data, and it's assisted with AR/VR. Assisted with AR/VR to an extent where I, wearing a smart glass, can talk to an expert sitting in the headquarters somewhere in an AC room who has a dashboard that kind of relays the video that I see from the shop floor or from a remote site, where the expert from the headquarters can then help me fix issues which probably I'm not aware of. So that collaboration, real-time AV, audio video collaboration is all possible because of the connectivity that has come, and that's how it's shaping the entire emerging technology. Now, not to forget, if there is any accident, any untoward incident that has happened within a remote site or whatever it is, we have ability to do real-time, what we call a remote intervention from doctors and hospitals and support staff, paramedicals, and we also have the abilities of drones delivering real-time, life-saving medicines. If you could save a life, right? So that's potentially what is the industry focus, the typical use cases that we see, how you could think of these use cases, enhance them, think of something that's probably not happened, and truly drive innovation at the campus. Now, quickly, I want to summarize. The next few slides is about quickly summarizing where is everything heading, right? So I gave you this example of connected vehicle. I told you that these cars are now connected. They have an infotainment system which can be absolutely personalized. They have ability to look at service diagnostics, which is even if it is remote, and then give you those alerts to say, okay, you're running short of fuel, go get fuel. It's time for the change in the wheels. It's time for you to head to a service station, and so on and so forth. And like I said, the most important wave that we see from the automotive industry is the what we call wallet on a wheel, right? Tomorrow, like I said, if you walk into a gas station, you don't have to make the payment. The car will make the payment. It will know the service parts, the warranties of the service parts, when should there be regular service checkup, and so on and so forth. And all of this is very interactive. You see this conversational bots. The next time you sit in a car, I mean, you probably have seen MG already on the road. So the next time, you sit in the car, you can talk to your car. It could be setting the lights, turning on the ignition, whatever it is. So in simple words, every company, we talked about workers getting automated, the permits getting automated, how AR, VR is assisting them to do the repairs, the standard operating procedures, right? So every company in a way or two is now getting driven by data. It's now getting the way that data is then presented or being used, from a software perspective. So we tremendously see that every organization is more or less also a software organization. Now, you need hardware. There's nothing that's going to happen without hardware. You need the basic physical systems that comes together, from a mechanical structure perspective. You need those electrical components that gives that life to the entire hardware appliance that you put together, and that software that seems to be a cream on top of all of this. So all departments of the education or the specialization that you're doing is absolutely important to come together. The thrust that I'm trying to emphasize is that software is definitely kind of augmenting all of this together. Now, that's one side of the world, how companies are behaving, right? What is that technology, emerging technologies that could then give you that opportunity to be more innovative, right? But now if you look at the customer side, right, there's everything becoming on demand right now. Nobody wants to wait. Nobody wants to, even if they're walking into a healthcare with an appointment for a doctor, they don't want to wait there. They want it to be on dot and ensure that everything is on demand, right? Anything that I have to interact, I should have 360 degree of access to my data, to the various services offering that you have, and how I could interact with any touch points that the organization or your innovative service has to offer. So end of the day, all this gets tied to the personalization that are potentially possible, because every individual is different. And that leads to delightful interactions, right? That user experience that we always keep talking about. Now, when all of this is absolutely important, one thing that a customer will never compromise on is his sensitive data, is private data, and the privacy and the security of that data, right? So that are the key expectations that we see. So if you tie the emerging technologies, the innovations, and what customer expects, those three are the dots that you will have to connect if you are pulling together an innovative idea in your organization. So from an intelligent application perspective, you're talking about messaging, ability to push notifications, ability to log each and every transaction, the health telemetry of your application so that it proactively understands, and ability to validate, constantly add new changes, validate it with customers, come back and go through the continuous cycle of your CI/CD, continuous integration, continuous deployment through your various build and deployment pipelines. And of course, whatever you do, you will have to add the ability to take that data out and then derive those insights so that either you build more efficient operations or build new services to your end users, right? And doesn't matter. It's right now the imperative is absolutely clear. It could be cloud native, built on a public cloud, or built on an edge compute, right? It has that entire application cycle management has to be in connection with even the variables. You've seen WhatsApp integrations. Everything that I do right now seems to have an integration with WhatsApp, right? My banking service, my education service, all of that seems to be tied up with WhatsApp. So there's a need for you to tie yourself to variables and so on and so forth. So quickly to summarize, now that you understand what is that big wave that is impacting so much of emerging technologies, what are the typical ideas that the industry is going through? So if you're, when you come together and put your innovative idea, you need to differentiate it with the app. That seems to be the touch point with user experience, and that needs to be a differentiation. And that is only possible how fast you deliver your idea, how adaptive you are in terms of the various changes from the market or your end customers. Regulatory requirements is another adoption criteria. And your ability to develop is all dependent on the culture that that you will go through. When I say culture, it's absolutely important to have that cross-functional department emphasis within the campus. You need to have an electrical engineer, you need to have a mechanical engineer, you need to have a civil, you need to have all kinds of electronics and communication, computer science engineers. That cross-functional expertise is absolutely important to come together and build any innovation-driven council or an incubation cell at your campus. That's absolutely important. Now, quickly to summarize, everything is application of late, and development is absolutely important. The way people are delivering applications fast is using containerization. That's the technology that kind of helps bring in the efficiency, bring in the best practices of DevOps. Now also keep in mind, every time you're putting together, remember it's just not about your hardware appliance, your software features on top of the hardware appliances or embedded features. It is also about your ability to interact with anything as a service, right? Any other software as a service. You also have partner applications. We've seen this tremendous API economy growth where, if I'm building an application, I don't want to really take care of the SMS push notifications, right? There is services like Twilio or any other operators who provide, where I could just simply write 2 lines of code and tap into a partner application and get that use case completed. So I'll have to interact with partner apps. I have to interact with things now, right? If you see like as simple as a smartwatch, you need to interact with them. Your application, your hardware, your service, whatever it is, has to have a form factor that's built in from a smartwatch or any wearables for that matter. And of course, you have to coexist with existing on-premises traditional applications, because your service has to interact with, let's say, CRM or let's say an ERP machine, which is there already in your customer, your enterprise customer perspective, right? So you'll have to, have a surround play to ensure all of these components are in place. And of course, data, like I said, tap onto the data, look at the insights and derive what is that you could do to take that forward. So your ability to integrate irrespective of the form factor, we see container DevOps helping it. So please get your basics in place so that you start working towards your AI/ML functions also. Now, quickly to summarize, being cloud native, having the AI ability, driving those analytics, being able to connect to anything for that matter, and having this innovation culture at the campus is the key ingredients that you will have to put together, from a perspective. So so we strongly believe, right, open source helps you get there. There's tremendous projects that are happening in the open source community that you can quickly tap in, build that very modular microservices-based architecture, have a strong foundation that's capable of giving you ability to tap into any public cloud or a private cloud or an edge form factor, and then empower the true developers, within your campus, where they can then tap into latest technologies like Kafka, or even serverless technologies like the Knative project, Spring Boot for microservices, Carcass, changing the whole Java emphasis, and of course Node.js tremendously, bringing the old browser side technologies to a client side server level technologies now with Node.js. All of this open source innovation. And if I could summarize, if you go to the cloud native functions, you would see tremendous amount of open source projects that you can tap in, build your services very easily, very quickly, and also add to the open source contribution, right? So remember service mesh, if you're building microservices. Remember serverless, you can even build function as a service to start tapping more like event driven. There's a cloud Knative project that you can tap in. I will probably share the links in an email to you guys, and you can tap in. Of course, Open Data Hub. Open Data Hub, it's what we've done is put together all the various toolings, right from your ETL, typically putting together a data lake, transforming, standardizing the data, and make sure it's available on data lake, even if you have to expose it as an in-memory database, more like caching from an end customer perspective. Ability to build a models that you can then train, and if there's changes that you'll have to do, you can remodel it, retrain it, so that your inferencing use cases, your machine learning use cases are more accurate as you continue to develop. And of course, Kafka, like I said, whatever you want to, data streaming that you will have to do, you can bring that into place. So all this is available on Open Data Hub. Please go in there, tap data, anything and everything you do, from a shop floor to factory to AR, VR, everything relies on data for you to understand either equipment or process or productivity, related losses or improvements, analyzing root causes, or even getting an advice in terms of what should be my next best action, right? All of this would definitely lead into what we call the higher yield, the higher throughput, and minimize your waste, right? So all of this tied into is what is going to make your intelligent application. I have an example here that you could tap into the NVIDIA's NGC libraries. So you have this NGC library that you can use that library to quickly pull a machine learning model and use it to your project. You can develop it, train it, test it, retrain it, test it, retrain it, and add those insights back to your applications. So this is a quick example of all that you have to do from an emerging technologies, what is available as open source, how you can tap in, and all of that. Now, very importantly, the last subject and the last slide of this webinar is why innovation at campus, right? Now this is absolutely important. If I was on the talent acquisition team, if I am interviewing you guys, I will always try to evaluate you guys from a theoretical knowledge versus a skill that you have, right? So there's a lot of you guys in this in the part of these audiences are working towards ensuring that you develop your skills, right? And all of that can be elevated to the next level when we bring in a real experience, right? And that's only possible when we build a startup mindset at the campus. How do we look at each of you guys as an entrepreneurs, right? Where it's not just about gaining experience, it's also about working in the team. You remember I said, irrespective of what department you belong to, all you have to come together to bring that cross-functional expertise to the table so that you can truly not just think about this excellent idea, which is very innovative, but at the same time start implementing it, learn the lessons, learn the hurdles in the real time, improvise it, and keep getting yourself into that continuous service improvement cycle, right? Absolutely important. And the way I have seen it, the way I've been fortunate to work with some of the student communities is by putting together an incubation cell, which could then lead to what we call IP development. We call that IP is your intellectual property, which is largely driven through invention methodologies where you file patents and so on and so forth. Academias, I've had the fortune to work on IUDX, the Indian Urban Data Exchange, 5-year related, both from Red Hat and the Indian Institute of Science. There's tremendous number of projects, funding from the government, funding from the startup ISVs. They don't have real cash crunch. They need academics, academias, student communities like you to be a part of the research and development that they do in terms of developing new IPs. And the best place, and trust me, I'm being very honest here, once you go out of the college and try to validate your ideas, it's absolutely difficult. Right now, you have an excellent ecosystem. You have all the professors, all the HODs whom you can walk up to, request them to be your mentor, start an incubation cell within your institute, tap into the professors, get startups, get the CTOs and CEOs of the startups and the independent software vendors to come to your campus, help you validate your ideas, and help you kind of start putting together. And of course, there's a lot of government initiatives. One of that is what we're part of, right? The Institutions Innovation Council. And if you see the IEDC, tremendous work from the state of Kerala, where the Kerala Startup Vision had put together an IEDC for each and every college. And if you've seen, it's become the second Silicon Valley of India, right? It's tremendous startups that have incubator of Kerala. And of course, government has taken that into what they now call the New Gen IEDC. And AICT also has a lot of policies, hackathons that you could be a part of, take your innovative ideas, implement them, pitch them. There are also prizes to be won that could lead to, that pre-capital investment that is required for you to then go put together a small setup so that you can then make your innovative idea into something which is a reality. So absolutely important. I don't know if you have some of these incubation cells. If we don't, then I'd be very happy to work with your stakeholders and see how we could put one together in your institute. So that's pretty much what I had for today. I know Dr. Manjunath had said we will spend the last few minutes in terms of questions and answers. If you guys have any, I will definitely look forward to all of that. Back to you, Dr. Manjunath, for any final words and any questions, guys, let me know. Happy to answer. Like Dr. Shenoy said, I will also look forward to seeing you guys potentially, probably a physical visit and all of that at some point of time. But for now, back to you, Dr. Manjunath.
Thank you, Vinay. Thanks a lot. And I request the participants, if there is any queries, you can unmute yourself and you can ask the queries, or you can post your question in the chat box.
I have the first question, Vinay.
Yes, Brad. I'm so very happy to see you first. My regards to you as always. Please let me know.
Thank you. So why don't you come to college? That is my question.
Absolutely. The next immediate, as soon as the pandemic mellows down a little bit, the first thing that I'm going to do is drive down and meet you, meet all of us.
Thank you. Where are you at present?
I'm based out of Bangalore, so I'm back in Bangalore.
Yeah. Okay. You were in London, no?
Yes, I was in UK, I was in US, a bit of China, I've been all over.
Okay. All over the world you traveled.
Yeah. Except Pakistan.
No, it's not. No, if you wish, you can go to
No,
share
no.
your knowledge. Knowledge
Yeah,
is unique, na?
absolutely. Everything that is learned from you, madam. Happy to do.
Okay, thank you, Vinay, for addressing our audience and joining us. Please do come to college. Looking forward to meet you.
Absolutely, my privilege. The next immediate potential possibility, I'll be there. Sorry, you're speaking on mute, I guess. The last few.
Manjunath, you can proceed. Manjunath,
Thank you, madam. Thank you, madam. Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Mr. Vinay, there is one question posted in chat box. Any startup faces funding crunch. How do you propose to overcome this?
Very good question, Mahesh. I think every startup, for that matter, is facing a huge cash flow. They don't have deep pockets. There's always a funding crunch. What they do is there's two ways. There's a lot of VCs, venture capitalists, angel funders, Series A funders. If you have an idea, you've already put together as a pitch deck, we can take you to a lot of these startup incubators who can then put you onto these, VCs and angel fund investors who, if everything goes well, they will, in return, they will of course fund you, give you that necessary injection of funds, but at the same time, they will also take a key share of your equity. So you'll have to be very careful in looking at how do I help a startup overcome this cash crunch, situation. But at the same time, you should be very, very careful in understanding when to go about in making this open. Right? There are a lot of startups who want to keep this very proprietary. They don't want to go towards any external investors to fund them. Right? So it's important. How do you go about doing it? If you have a pitch with you, let me know. I will take you to the ecosystem, which is all these startup incubators and all of that, where we can go and present this and look for potential investors. And if you're looking at the academic, the research, building IPs, validating your use cases, and so on and so forth, a startup incubation cell in an institute like yours can have very good students, professors come together and evaluate that idea, strengthen the proposition, and then take it to external investors. I hope that answers your question, Mahesh.
I think you got a right answer for your question, Mahesh. So any other queries from participants? You can post it in the chat box.
I know we started a little late. It was few minutes, so if we don't have any questions, we can also wrap up. You have my email IDs, and feel free to reach out to Dr. Manjunath. Of course, like Madam said, I will look forward to being there physically in the campus also, so we can interact there as well. If we have all questions done, we're good to wrap up as well.
So if any queries is there, you can have, you can communicate through his mail, so that we'll post you the mail ID of Mr. Vinay.
Sure. Thanks.
So if any queries is there, please open up yourself. I have posted a mail ID in the chat box. So the participants, you can make a note of his mail ID, and you can communicate. And you can also have a discussion on how you can take forward the innovation at your campus. Hope, I think, Vinay, I think, shall we end up this session?
Yes, I think. Thank you for setting this up.
Right. Okay.
Thank you.
Now, Now I request Daphne Madam. Daphne Madam, if you are there, please respond.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes.
So I request Daphne, Professor Daphne Madam, to say a vote of thanks.
Yes, sir. Good afternoon to one and all. It is indeed my pleasure to render the vote of thanks. I thank Mr. Vinay Rajagopal, ISV IoT Embedded Technology, Lead Red Hat India, South Asia, for sharing your knowledge and enlightening us about innovation and emerging technology and the ways to establish incubation cell in our campus. Thank you, sir, for accepting our invitation and delivering this webinar. Thank you, sir. I also thank our principal, Dr. Syed Arif, Vice Principal Sir, Dr. H.G. Shenoy, Dean, Professor Rukmani Divakaran ma'am, and all HODs for supporting us to conduct this webinar. I also thank all the participants for attending this webinar. Thank you, one and all.
Thank you, Madam.
Thank you, sir.
Dear participants, so I'm posting this feedback link in the chat box. You can just fill this form. Please spend 2 minutes of your time. Once after filling this feedback form, you can exit the session. So, and I would like to thank one and all for making this event successful.